seen such an enormous change in my lifetime in this area. When I was born in the 1950s, to be disabled was a terrible tragedy. It was just seen as a life sentence, really. At the point a child got a diagnosis, they would be called handicapped. The parents were usually told everything they would never achieve, they'd never be able to do. The expectations for their life were extremely low. Certainly for me, it was never expected that I would leave home, that I would get married, that I'd have children, I'd have a job, I'd have a voice in the world. None of those things were expected. There was no disability movement. Disability was seen as a God-given tragedy and possibly a punishment for past evil deeds from the parents. Parents felt full of guilt and shame. There was, as a disabled girl, there was absolutely no place in this country I could receive an education that would lead to taking public examinations. There was no differentiation between people with different types of impairments. We were all disabled, we were all handicapped, we were all the same. We all needed to be shouted at, patted on the head, and treated as children for the whole of our lives. The best we could hope for was a job at Remploy. I can remember that word filling me with absolute horror as a young person. One of the reasons I think it's so important to say all this is because of how it makes you see yourself. Apart from the actual rights you don't have, it makes you feel so insignificant as a human being. And I think what happens is that even when things change, because certainly for children now, disabled people now have far greater rights and a voice in the world. And there is a growing understanding that we are an oppressed group, like other oppressed groups. That it's the discrimination and mistreatment which make our lives so difficult. But even with those some improvements, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll feel any better about yourself. And without actually learning the history, learning that we've been part of a group who have resisted, who have come together and fought, it's been disabled people who have brought about these changes. And that is something each generation needs to know, that they are part of that group of people who chained themselves to buses, who fought for the DGA, for the discrimination legislation, who, did so many things to make lives better for ourselves and each other. That struggle and that history is not known yet. People don't know it. They still think the government did it. Kind souls in the government. Or parents did it. But parents, of course our allies played a big part in it. But it would not have happened were it not for disabled people organising, like every other group of oppressed people. We had to organise and come together and bring our own voice and learn to be proud of ourselves. It's a history I'm enormously proud of. And as Richard said, when you look back and look at how we have been treated over the years, it's amazing that it didn't work, isn't it? We're still here. We're coming out, we're getting stronger and louder and bigger all the time. So what does that say about human beings? That says something really, really important about what really matters to us. And it's a thing that I've also noticed, that despite the struggle for inclusion, an awful lot of people are using that word. And they know what it means, even if they can't explain it. And it's like, it's as if it stirred something right in the core of our beings, which everybody wants. I don't believe there's anyone on this planet who doesn't want inclusion in their hearts. I mean, it's only the fears and everything else that is stopping it. So the bigger our voices and the more platforms we get to speak, the more we will be able to move things forwards, not just for us, but to create a different kind of world to live in.